All right. Welcome to my channel. I am Red Falcon, and with me today is my co-host Trout from our community Discord server, Red Star Vanguard. Today we'll be covering the final match of our in-house tournament, where we use the micro deck format that is available for reading on the Steam community guides and is provided in the link in the description below. So today we have Alpha Team led by Ambi and Charlie Team led by Communism will win. So let's review the forces deployed, and we'll start the countdown, Trout.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch over this match again. It was a really fun match to play. It was a bit more static. I was hoping for a bit more of a fight of mobility, but it was a fun match. It was a hard fought match, and Charlie team did a really good job just fighting it out, holding points, and pulling assets up as needed.
Indeed.
Uh,
And for reference, Trout here is also known as Turbo Comrade on Ambi's team over here. So we can see them over here in blue, and we'll see that Trout is deployed over here towards Bravo. Looks like he's heading in for Charlie.
so for me, it's kind of cool to look over and see how these guys set up their initial push. I went through and I watched both of their other tournament games, and they do a really nice combined cooperative arms push forward. So they pull sort of good solid units for doing certain roles that each player has, and they pull them up together, which is a really strong way of doing it. Panda Bear is pulling Mi-25s with forward infantry to try to get a foothold in the town. Um, Axiom is pulling like solid early armor assets that are fairly affordable with the T-64Bs, I believe,
Hmm.
T-64Bs, and
T-72 ways.
communism.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go
I think communism is pulling. Well, I'm trying to find out.
ahead. I think he's doing airborne here, so you may not have as nearly as many assets on the ground. So
That looks
all
like that.
I think all the action we're going to see from communism is going to be up in the air, because the only thing I've seen from him right now is maybe a fob and his command.
Just to clarify on what assets they will have, I went through and I watched their matches, and I had pretty much correctly predicted which decks they would pull. And they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Axiom is pulling a Soviet armor, Panda is pulling an Eastern Bloc Moto, and Communism is pulling Soviet air.
And
So
not only that, they also profiled you, Trout. They profiled you and your team, and they assessed the last match and tried to base their strategies about what you pulled. So don't worry, Trout. You weren't the only one doing intelligence. You sneaky
I'm glad
bastard,
it.
you.
I'm glad it's going both ways. That's what I'd want to hear, and that's the kind of match I want to hear, where it's competitive, just competitive enough that you really want to get the edge on the other team and figure out how they're thinking, how they're playing, and how they work together.
Indeed.
Um,
And that's what I
I
like
kind of
about the micro deck format. You can if you play too predictably, people will know what you bring. Now, whether or not they can do anything about it is up to their own ability and skill in the units they pull against it and the ways that they pull it. But uh, it's one of the things about the micro deck format where it's limited based on the amount of cards you have in your deck. You know.
I think both teams correctly assessed kind of what the fight was going to be on this map, and the assessment is that the fight is India Gulf. Um, for a heavy AI deck with a lot of armor, sometimes the AI will just push like Charlie Delta or Foxtrot Echo because the AI is stupid. But when you're playing against players, you know that that's a really hard choke point on both of those bridges if there's any defense set up. And given that their team did not have, Charlie team did not have a naval asset, it makes sense that they committed India Gulf because that's where the fight was going to be. And for our team as well, actually, we committed a lot India Gulf. I should have committed more because I thought with my naval assets I could really do some damage on Alpha, pushing through there.
It's okay. We'll get to that point, sir. We will get to that point.
Yeah,
But for our
looking at her,
viewers, we have to we have to kind of assess the match as we go.
yes, looking at our initial setup on Alpha team, I was definitely set up to hold the bridge at Charlie. Ambi was set up to do a light defense at the bridge at Foxtrot, and then all other assets were set to go into Gulf India, and that was our initial plan. You can kind of see the assets are a little bit airborne, a little bit armor,
Yeah,
and
we see Embi here with the TIE 90s loaded with lots of air-to-air missiles. This is a great helicopter to open the game with to counter helo rushes early off and cut enemy infantry from being able to be readily deployed at the start of the match, at least without being harassed. Those 8 infrared missiles will easily shred up helicopters.
now
And
that we've looked at, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think the missiles that they have are Iglas or something. Let me see if I can get like a quick check here. Uh, yeah, we're looking at about 6 HE, and that's enough to bring down like some of the standard Blue 4 helicopters, and it's easy to bring down like a Hind or something with 2 hits. So that is definitely a helicopter to watch out for in these kinds of matches. It's a gimmicky helicopter, but destroying those initial rushes in the beginning of a game is a big deal, and that's why the Tie 90 exists.
Given that we've looked over the kind of the force setup of both sides, did you want to give it a go and start watching the match?
Indeed, indeed. Just gonna do one more assessment over here on Emby. Yeah, he's pulling a lot of what looks to be heliborne infantry, and we got Reach over here with a lot of mechanized forces with 2 Tunguskas. Or no, 2 Shilkas. 2 Shilkas. Oh, okay. That is interesting. And 1 Tunguska there in the back. Got it. Got it. And then, yeah, we got a couple of BMP2s. It looks like 3 sections and a SPW-40 with, I presume, is probably transporting Grenzer infantry. All right. And then, yeah, then you just got your tanks over here. A couple of HQ-7s and 3 sections of tanks. Yeah, and it looks like there's going to be a defense set up for Charlie, and go from there. Maybe even a rush. We'll see. All right.
On
Count
your count.
on the count. All right. 3, 2, 1, play. All right. So we see communism's helicopter making a flight out here, probably going in for Echo. And we see the heli assault going to Russia very aggressively with what I assume is going to be towards India. There is a flare back here on the backside where it says Hilo in the corner over here, but we'll see how that goes. And Ambi opening up with a MiG-29 9-B. He is really honing in on the anti-heli rush tactics here with the TIE 90 MiG-29 combo from Red Dragons. That is aggressive. And Communism over here with MiG-25 PDs ready to go for the intercept. And the MiG-29 is not angled for the attack. As the merge happens, MiG-29 passes through, and they both taken damage, and they are both evacing. But oh, yep, Ambi, oh, Ambi's plane just got intercepted. MiG-29 intercepted.
That is a painful early loss, and those MiG-25 PDs definitely did what they were supposed to do there. So.
Indeed. I believe that communism had gone and upfed those PDs, and apparently he feels that they were pretty good. And it looks like the TIE 90s over here have been doing work, having expended 7 missiles. I do not see the second one, unfortunately, but I might have missed the little engagement there. Meanwhile, looks like you just pulled a ship in, and this could be a big threat over by Alpha if it's left unchecked.
So part of my initial strategy on this was to try to get pressure on the Alpha side of the map in order for them to have to refocus resources away from the fight on India Gulf, and therefore give us a little bit of an advantage as they're spending points and pulling assets to defend the Alpha coast.
Indeed. And it looks like we have a minor engagement happening here. Looks like you are engaging those C-64Bs with missiles, but the ZBD-86s are just not able to land those hits. T-64Bs were not able to see those missiles coming at them, though, based on the lack of ability of those missiles flying from the T-64Bs, having not done so. Also, looks like Ambi over here is engaging what I assume is to be a lot of LSTR and SPW-40s and whatever was over there. But I am mighty worried that we do not have enough infantry spread out across this area. 25T coming in, trying to snipe out some of these BMPs. And in microdecks, like the 25T is really a big threat in a game style where you're usually not limited on number of cards. 25T can really clean house if it's left unchecked. This is true perhaps for any match, but I think for microdecks it's especially more punishing.
I've just switched over to Charlie Team's viewpoint, and they can definitely see the Jangu coming into Alpha now, so we can expect a reaction over there fairly quickly.
Indeed.
From Charlie Team, and we'll have to see what happens there. I really like their setup on between Echo and Foxtrot. Charlie Team did a really nice job. Panda did a really nice job setting up a fire base in the trees with Honkers and some other T-64Bs, it provided actually throughout the game really good coverage of the advance into India, and that was a very, very good positioning early in the game.
Indeed. And here we see Panda taking the initiative at crossing the bridge. Uh, those BMPs were going to try to engage, but they made down the bridge just in time. The advantages of the advantages of having the wheels is mighty fine.
Being able to get in quickly and dump the troops and occupy those buildings and really take that ground.
Indeed. But it looks like the SPW-80 explosion panicked both those Machutsen, and they were not going to hold up against other Machutsen 90 while panicked. Sad day. Sad day indeed.
Just to confirm, the Mach Schultzen have shock training, is that correct?
Indeed. They do have shock training, and they have a really good RPG. I believe it hits for about 23, 24 AP on the RPG. Firing range about 525 meters. Meanwhile, those 30 mils are just shredding the infantry over here. Axiom tanks are trying to engage at this point against some infantry that you can spot, and they rightfully fall back into the side of the town to take cover from the tank shells.
Oh, and you'll want to see this. If you head over to the Jangon Alpha, we have actually got the airstrike. Oh, they ordered and they canceled it.
So we do see some 27Ks over here. They are anti-ship planes, and they are very ready, looking to go after the Jiangyu. But we shall
Now,
see.
I'd like to comment on that. They pulled them in and they evac them immediately. So what that tells me is that they were communicating and they looked at.
Here we go. Here we go. All right.
Oh, here we.
All right. So it looks like we got a MiG-29K and two 27Ks. All right. Let's go. Axiom is coming in with the MiG-29K. 4 missiles. 1, 2, and plowed. Oh! Right in the fucking stovepipe of the ship.
Very nice coordinated airstrike. Very nice. We didn't have the assets up there soon enough to cover the airspace, and I didn't have the number of ships pulled really. So.
And Trout, it looks like you are pulling in another one.
I haven't learned my lesson apparently.
No, have you? Did you learn your lesson the first time, old man?
No, I never learned my lessons. Lessons are never learned.
Oh, all right. Let's go back to this town fight over here. So it looks like we got LSTR 40s engaging Pachangsu. That is going to be a no sweat fight. But then again, the LSTR 40s are panicked, and we do have one squad of Pachangsu here that are not, and that can make a difference. I know sometimes we disrespect like regular line infantry, but it's really the morale when it comes down to it. If your troops are panicked, no matter how good they are, they will almost be useless against anything that they go up against. And that is infantry fights in a nutshell. Now, when both infantry teams are panicked, then it's an even fight. Those LCR are getting whittled down, while the Pachangsu, they're kind of starting to balance out or equalize some of the morale, but the mortars are now starting to take their toll on the Pachangsu. While the LCR are starting to learn their lesson, they are falling back and trying to disengage from the Pachangsu. While things are Delta trying to look pretty static, defenses on both sides are set up.
Ship attack here.
Oh my! All right, so 47 SK comes in for the go for the intercept, and the MiG-29K comes in to plow missiles in, dealing quite a bit of damage.
Now, I managed to pull up an SU-27K there, and it got shot down, which is an expensive loss, but it did hold off from that Jangu being sunk right away.
Indeed. And this is the cost of not having, combat air patrol. Ships
Yes.
For naval combat need air-to-air patrol. Ideally over them, but maybe even a little forward. But forward can be a little risky at times.
My apologies.
Go ahead.
We did start to pull combat air patrol. You can see Ambi with his MiG-29 912Bs. Just too late. So better communication, better coordination, and that's definitely the strength that Charlie team had.
Indeed. And those 27Ks are solid for going after mostly the enemy's combat air patrol. While they do have 6 uh, uh, fire and frigate missiles, medium range missiles for air to air. You can turn off the missile and use them for you can turn off the anti-ship missile and use it for air to air advantage. And that's really I think where the 27 SK comes in, or 27K comes in. But
I
one missile by itself has its limits.
I do want to point out, I think that Axiom has done an excellent job doing a defense in depth with the infantry. So he set up tanks in a way that when the infantry get into a fight, the tanks can do supporting fire. And he set it up for multiple angles, so it's very hard for any infantry transports or any supporting vehicles to get into the town fight. And it's just a very nice setup. It's got a very nice C shape, and that really puts pressure down on two sides on our town fight on Gulf. And that is it's a good, solid setup.
Indeed. All right, looks like I'm getting another defense flare from Panda Bear Tello. Looks like they are trying to take note of your ship over there. They know they didn't kill it. They know they didn't kill it. But yeah, it's something that they're thinking about. And staying right on
Now,
top of that sea and air route can be could prove challenging for them to be able to effectively deploy anything from there.
yeah,
Communism deploying his B-25 PD over Kilo. Um, doing combat air patrol over his forces here. All right, and meanwhile we're seeing some just standard mortar fire exchanges happening over here, on top of Reach on E's forces. Oh, and Axiom is providing direct cover fire for those Matrixen pushing into the town, allowing them to try to close distance. But those MI8s are going to punish those Matrixen for being out in the open. And that is where anti-air needs to be pressed, unfortunately. I would make a bit of a criticism here that those infantry could have used some smoke crossing. And it's not that they didn't have the assets. So a little more coordination with smoke, I think, could have prevented those infantry dying, at least in the open field.
I'm trying to keep an eye on the naval corridor. Now we actually have combat air patrol and two Jangus over their naval corridor into Juliet. So it'll be interesting to see what they do to respond to that, because that is a reasonable amount of force now.
And looks like we have some of Axiom signature Malkas doing some heavy artillery fire. I believe these have about 10 HE on the gun. Quite a potent force to deal with. Yep, those are 10 HE artillery shells raining down on Reach on his APCs over here. And they are not happy about it. Alright, and looks like we have another swarm of aircraft inbound. Sorry to cut you off, Trout.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to point out. This is going to be a good fight. Let's see what happens.
Alright.
We do have a response coming in from Ambi and Comrade Vichan-He. A little bit late. We'll see what happens. One ship down. Oh,
and that was the one with full health.
That was the one with full health. Correct. Good targeting. Unfortunately, our combat air patrol was pulling in, and it's their side of the map, so they have the advantage of a quicker pull time there.
Indeed. I believe that this is like a good map for the Jiangyus to hang out probably in the center of Alpha, maybe a little bit on the friendly side. Mostly the main task is to deny access of the main bridges over there with those with those long range guns.
To get back to the city fight, I mean, it's really maintained a static position. Charlie team has just done a really good job just holding it kind of at the point that they want it and then pulling up the assets to capture both Gulf India. So it's not a huge point lead, but it's +1 and it'll add up.
Indeed.
One of the things I found interesting when I look back over this map is the second bridge between Foxtrot and Echo was essentially left not unguarded, but definitely not seen as the focal point for defensive. We had some assets set back in Foxtrot to cover the bridge, and then Charlie team had a few assets back in Delta to cover that bridge. But if there was one point on the map where you might have been able to sneak something through, and that probably would have been to provide a flank or something like that, that would have been the point. Oh, and we have anti-ship combat coming back in again. Let's see what happens.
Looks like the PU is doing a distraction, but it's at the wrong time. But it's enough to distract the air defense from being able to do anti-ship combat. That
And
hurts.
once again, our airnet was just not there yet, and we did not have it called in time. And so, although they've had to expend a lot of points pulling in the MiG-29Ks and the Su-27Ks, they've gotten rid of all those ship assets. They've gotten rid of the ability to really secure that as a corridor to counterattack onto Juliet. Kind of looking at now they'll be able to focus on pulling a lot of assets in. Now the ships are dealt with, they can focus on pulling assets into the fight in India Gulf.
So
And it'll
this
be
is
interesting
a
to see how they force.
so I'm watching Alpha right now. This is a fun reminder to all my viewers that if you play Wargame Red Dragon, anti-ship missiles do not work on troop transports or riverboats. As we watch
This is
the MiG-29Ks desperately trying to sink these Yukinks.
I will admit I did not know that. You can see I've dumped out my transports because I thought it would attempt to sink the transports, and that's definitely a lesson to learn. And go, oh, you can just sail them across and not worry about it unless you see an actual ground attack.
However, Navy is wise and uses 25T. Now that is a real threat to those transports. But unfortunately, he doesn't feel like sticking it around because he took a little damage and he's running away with it. Which these U-Kings don't actually have a lot of accuracy to really be doing anything. In fact, they are really terrible with anti-air and only about 24-15-meter range against airplanes. But it's enough to like strafe at some aircraft like the 25T.
In retrospect, I would have gathered my ships together at once, and I would have gathered naval invasion force at once, and I would actually put the U-wings forward of the ships, and that way you might get that stunning hit. That's just enough to prevent a missile from hitting.
Precisely. Precisely.
Lessons learned. I mean, old men don't learn lessons. No lessons learned.
No lessons learned, old man. But no, like, I should probably do a video at some point discussing naval invasion tactics in Wargame. Yeah, obviously the idea should be that you want to gather your ships together, put your transports out in front to do landing, and keep your ships respectively back to provide gunfire support, within maybe about 2 kilometers inland, which means keeping it about 2 kilometers away from the shoreline. Maybe about 2.5 to avoid being shot up by tanks.
Now, this point is interesting. In terms of the town fight, we definitely have the advantage of infantry. But with the open areas and the open approaches into the town, and they've just sat back outside the town, and they're comfortably sitting there in the defensive. We have the infantry, but we can't use it. We can't push it forward, otherwise it just comes into immediate fire. And they've done a really good positioning, setting up India and Gulf just as a good open defensive ground and taking advantage of the assets they have and the way they're supposed to be used.
And those Conquerors are going to be causing some havoc, it looks like. Even though they're just a single 2-man team double stacked, their range and strength gives them a lot of bonus. However, your team is Turbo. You especially, actually, your Drought or Turbo, are especially punishing those APCs for being spotted even slightly.
Once I realized that my ship quarter was not going to work as a functional route of invasion for Juliet, I said I've got to do something to support my team, and I pulled in mortars and I did the best mortar fire I could to try to suppress and destroy assets coming in.
And looks like Panda here has dug in their heels with the Conqueror's M and starting to shred these tanks up pretty good. I watched one ZTC 85 2-way get absolutely demolished by the Conqueror's M missile. And it looks like the mortar fire is responding in kind to the destruction of that tank, which is proper.
Really solid two front, so it's not a perfect angle, but they've definitely built an angle up where they're attacking from directly in India and they're attacking from the forest just outside of India. And that two directions, the closer we get, the more pronounced the angle gets and the more likely you're going to get a side shot on that. So that is really good positioning for defensive.
Indeed. And here we see Axiom shooting up one of your transports. Tanks are especially noted to be effective against landing transports. That's why the transports themselves come with a smoke launcher, at least for Red 4. On Blue 4, Marine, they typically relying on your own artillery to provide the smoke, which is kind of one of the reasons why U.S. Marines get so many artillery bases.
And at this point, it's very much like this is becoming a traditional war. And Comrade Richan, he has really done a good job fighting and holding the city and holding that foothold in. But there's a cost to that. The cost is you lose a lot of infantry. And you can definitely see the forces that we had kind of just outside of India and Gulf. They've thinned out, and it's going to open up that ability for them to push in now with infantry.
Yeah, it looks like communism brought in some BMD-2s and a lot of VDV-90 to bat, and they are just starting to sweep them through the main section of the town in Gulf after they've swept through India quite successfully.
You know, looking at it, I'm learning a lot of the value of retreating in wargame and pulling back assets when a front has been lost in terms of fighting infantry to hold the front. And this definitely would have been a good time to pull back some of our anti-air assets and even some of our artillery assets potentially. Just pull things back to maintain those assets for later use in the fight until you have enough reinforcement to hold them in the position they're at.
Yeah, and it looks like those Shokas are just having a rough time. They are effective at ground support at close range, but without infantry to bat and support by themselves will be marginally ineffective, unfortunately. Oh, and looks like you're making a tank assault over here. Across the bridge. Ooh. We will see how this goes. I see a couple smoke plumes. 25T and Su's 27M are here to play. 25T is still up in the air. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Oh, no, it's not. And Ambi gets the snipe on the 25T. That hurts. But the PUs are here to clean.
At this point of the match, Comrade Regent, he was really saying, I need support. I need something to reinforce or something to pull heat off the city. And so I tried to commit to just, I knew it was going to be a distraction, but push in and pull more attention towards Delta. So they have to say, okay, we got to pull resources to respond to that.
Ah, so you were kind of forced to do an Operation Dengo, eh?
I wouldn't say force, but it was just trying to pull heat off, and unfortunately, it was not enough to seriously pull assets to Delta.
Ambi is pulling back, and the 27K is pursuing over Tunguska's. But the gun is not on. The seed threat is real. The TIE 90s were taking a couple pot shots too. But the 27K gets away despite flying directly over Foxtrot. That is a sample of the air defense network for
Now,
communism.
Panda has actually starting to develop a good flanking position. He's pulling helicopters just outside of Gulf, and we have an exposed flank where our Tanchas and our artillery are sitting kind of in a little valley, and he's trying to push that and just kind of drive us back off that point so that they can pull our assets and our attention away from the front line and being able to reinforce it.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I like to give Tanchas or any kind of like artillery asset a little anti-air, even if it's just a token anti-air unit and a little bit of recon, just in case something like this happens.
Interesting comment there, and actually on overextension, is those helicopters would have done a lot of damage had they come immediately in to fight the Tanchas. And they attempted to do kind of a hard sweep over into Hotel, and by that time we had time to pull anti-air assets, so they ran right into those FLAS of the Tunguskas and just got mulched. So
Yeah, and the HQ-7s also did some work, it looks like. Alright, let's go back to the town fight. As the rest of the map is looking pretty static at the moment, all eyes are on the town. communism desperately trying to find a foothold to regain beyond, perhaps even Gulf. And the Tunguska taking some pot shots at MiG-29, dealing some damage, keeping out of the fight for a little bit. Looks like you have deployed a command unit, a amphibious command to just hold Alpha. I think that from the beginning of the match, that might have been the smart move rather than using a ship command to hold it. Although as tempting as a ship command is, uh, as we have seen, it is a huge target.
But at this point in the match, I mean, we've really devolved into a kind of a static line fight, and they definitely have the advantage pushing into Gulf. Um, it'll be kind of interesting to see how they develop and try to pull assets to either widen the flank on the fight or to have just firepower superiority and push straight through. So um, for me personally, at this point in the fight, it was trying to really get good mortar fire down and any of the infantry coming in just to suppress them and allow our infantry to fight without being as panicked. And
Oh,
Panda Bear is pulling assets in, SPW 80s with infantry. So we'll see where those get deployed to and kind of where they want to choose to bring the fight through.
27M coming in. We got to snipe on something. 27M is not looking like it's having a good day, and it is out. The king is out, and that was a snipe on a Tunguska. Ooh, that is rough to say.
I think we did a fairly good job with our anti-air net this match, just making sure things recovered and making sure we had the assets. Definitely we got pressured later in the match. At this point we're getting fairly pressured, but we had the things we needed to keep their bombers off of our troops.
I have to ask though, your team started off without a fob. Did you feel that pressure of not having supplies?
No, I actually didn't. I had brought a second stack of cargoes, and even at the end of the game, I still actually had cargoes. It for me and for my supplies, we took enough casualties. We had a high enough casualty rate that we had supplies where we needed them for the anti-air net and for the artillery. Um, but most of our artillery was forward mortar artillery, and therefore it's not sitting back at the fob sitting off the fob, and it's not as much micro to resupply it. So I didn't really find it a problem not to have a fob this match.
I see.
Now, this is what I was waiting for. They're trying to develop a position, so Panda Bear Tellum is bringing Mi-25s in with infantry, and I think they're going to try to land them in the town at Gulf. It's fairly aggressive, and I would expect them to have better anti-air assets up to allow for that, but we'll see how it goes.
And to double down on that, I am again saying that the lack of smoke is very, very noticeable. But looks like they're getting away with it. They are landing behind friendly forces, so that's at least benefit of the doubt there.
I will say I thought it was a Ka-52. It's actually a Ka-50 Akula, and so there isn't a dedicated seed asset to take care of that Tunguska should it be turned on. It is actually on.
Oh,
Um,
hold on. We just got a really good snipe by Axiom against some Yukchon Day 90 up on the hill back there, which kind of cuts off eyes on the top of the hill now. Sorry, I was got you off there. Go ahead.
this is actually a fun, interesting part of the game because it's them really being set up in that town at the Gulf, and now they're having to transition to trying to clear out the woods. And I think they bring in some good assets, and I think there's some pretty good coordination. Um, really, for us, we just don't have the defensive assets there to hold the fight. And I'm pretty sure at this point, Comrade Reach and he was actually out of line infantry. There was just nothing left. And so it was the communication and the timing to bring in enough reinforcements to hold that position.
Indeed. And as a Marine player, the inability to, I say, mount a successful offensive onto Delta or Juliet um, was a huge cost factor, I believe. You can still
Yep.
bring in
My
additional tanks and reinforcements by land or by sea, but at this point, I think the assault was, at least on Juliet and Delta, was successfully held by Axiom, and the rest, thanks to his teammates doing work on your ships there.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job preventing that, and the advantage of having a Marine player in this match was really nullified by their coordinated air control, naval and air superiority.
Indeed.
In turn,
But
I think good use of napalm as well to prevent us from bringing up reinforcements. They've napalmed the force, and that prevents our infantry from really being able to push up to counter attack as they push their Gornos and their Machschultzen into the forest and Gulf.
Indeed. And napalm just becomes this huge wall for infantry that they cannot cross, and it is very useful for that. Ooh, I like this here. We're seeing some supplies coming in for this T-72A. Keeping every tank alive in a macro deck fight is critical. You've got a limited number of cards and a limited number of tanks that you may run out of units before the end of the fight's even over. So keeping your vehicles alive, I think is important. And they have a supply chain for it. Although the Malkas that Axiom brought have been sipping on the fob quite dramatically. And he did bring his own fob. So he to his props, and also Communism brought a fob as well. So they had two fobs to sip on throughout the fight. And that just meant that ultimately they could resupply tanks, infantry, and otherwise without really having to worry about spending all that much more points on having to bring in more vehicles.
I will say the combination of T-72Bs and T-72As was fairly nasty. The T-72Bs, I definitely noticed trying to bring in any sort of armor asset later in the fight. The Sphere missiles and the standoff range they have against a lightly armored, or a more lightly armored tank is definitely, it gives them a strong advantage.
Oh, definitely.
And the positioning of those T-72Bs to cover that open field between Foxtrot and India, and the use of T-72As in the actual fight in the forest in Gulf is just a really good placement of assets where they're strongest. They've taken the town kind of in Gulf beside the mountain, and they're starting to move assets into there to see if they can push over the mountain and gain a foothold on the mountain. And that's really nice, developing a flanking position to see if they can overrun from the side and do a bit more.
And if these are what I think they are, these would be Gornostrelki 90. They have a nice light missile that can fire out at 1,575 meter range. And knowing Communism, he probably bought Gornostrelki 90. Which means that if they come over this hill, and if they can destroy anything that would shoot at the back, they can really start denying the use of this mountain. And with the Mi-24Ds, they might be able to shrug off any assault by infantry or otherwise, perhaps.
Both of them did a good job working on points now. They moved a helicopter, command helicopter out to Alpha, just to deny us that +1 point and get a little bit more of a lead to hopefully kind of just solidify that point lead. So a good tactical use of bringing the right assets in at the right time, just to get every little advantage in a fight that is, in terms of points, not. They definitely have a force advantage, they definitely have a position advantage, but it's just securing that point advantage now.
Alright, so the Gornostrelki is making their way over the mountain. They've encountered some Luzandoi. Looks like your Marine infantry. And those Gornostrelki are going to have a hard time unless they get some air support. But the Gornostrelki are here not to mess with Luzandoi. They are here strictly to engage the vehicles. They do not expect to win against the monsters. They do not expect to win against Luzandoi. But the lack of Mi-24, Mi-25Ds to support the Gornostrelki, if I was one of those infantry, I would be very pissed that I died on that mountain.
Absolutely. Just not a lot of other assets. They were hoping, I think, for a quick kind of snipe, and nah, they didn't get it. Definitely should have pulled off my my mortars there. I'm shelling the Machschultzen now, so. Once again, I'll comment on their sort of defense in depth tactic. So they put their infantry forward, they've got tanks sitting back, and it means that the Schultzen engage first, they take most of the fire, and the tanks can return fire on targets that are within range. Really solid tactics in terms of infantry placement and tank placement on India and on Gulf.
Indeed.
As we just saw, Ambi at this point surrendered. Ambi had ran through most of his assets, so at this point it was to see what else we could get and what other points we could get to really continue the fight and to really bring in a counterattack.
And looks like Panda Bear Telum's Mi-25 was able to go into Alpha and take out your command unit there. And it just escapes away from the U-Kings that do not have good accuracy at all. Oh, but your planes are coming in with the salt gun runs. But communism is there to punish it.
Oh.
That meme strike costed your planes.
It cost a whole stack of them. It was just a good counterattack, good timing. We were overextended over territory they could see what was happening, and
clean
they
sweep.
cleaned it.
Cleaned. Absolutely clean sweep. Oh.
Yeah, 300 points, gone like that.
Oh, that was more than 300 points. I think that was about 450 or over. Maybe even 500.
Yeah, 135 per, I think. So, yeah.
165 for those 27Ks.
Now at this point, we're just trying to get assets so that we can do something, that we can choose to assault or choose to do something with. So it's setting up a defensive line and trying to build enough forces to assault against their constant pressure on the front line. And once again, I'll say it, they just do a really good job setting up that covering fire with their infantry and with their tanks. In the forest, they're a little bit of a disadvantage because they push up far enough that we actually get an angle on that forest fight. We can bring vehicles on two sides now.
Ooh.
And they don't necessarily have a supporting asset to support the Motostrelki and the spherical clarifier that we're seeing in the forest there.
And I'm going to say it again. I'm very happy to see that the infantry and whatnot are getting resupplied for the fight, just to help carry everything up back into the fight. So that way they don't have to expend more points on units. Although it is a sad day for the Malkas, they are out of ammo. The fob that they are sitting next to is completely depleted. F in chats for the Malkas. It's a sad day when you see artillery without supplies.
I can see we're pulling a lot of infantry in, so it looks like we're just trying to solid up the front line. We're trying to get fighting infantry on the line to keep them from pushing through the forest. And moving a few tanks in to do a fire support for an assault, just light assault and light fight for Axiom's push.
Oh, this is interesting. Looks like communism is really flying far deep towards Gulf. But they might be just stopping at the town. Well, they definitely see the Bachangsu that's rushing over the mountain.
Ambi's out of the game at this point, so I think I actually had control over Bachangsu. There's always that thing where someone leaves the game and the advantage is to get the points back, the disadvantage is sometimes you're not even sure what you're commanding anymore.
Yeah.
And that can become quite challenging.
Yeah, I think Ambi was telling me that he ran out of units, so he was just kind of forced to resign. And
Yes.
that's the thing in microdecks, for those of you watching. If you're not new to the format, having only 12 cards limits your ability to pull for having maximum number of pulls over, especially anything after a half hour.
Now at this point, we've successfully counterattacked into the forest, and one of the challenges there is, as we counterattack, we move back into a position where they have 2 lines of fire on us, And so we're attacking into a position where we have the initiative and we have the angles to attack into a position where we're flanked. And I think we'll take casualties and we'll definitely suffer because of that. Once again, as you mentioned, smoke can be used. Smoke could have been used to provide a screen between one of those flanking aspects and allowing us to attack without receiving that crossfire. Gotta use more smoke. Like you say that a lot or something. I don't know. Do you say
Yeah,
that?
yeah. You know, I'm kind of like the anti-surgeon general over here. Smoke or you die. Uh,
A Surgeon General's warning: if you don't smoke, your infantry will die, and your tanks and your transports.
yes, yes. Maybe that is probably the correct way to say it.
At this point, with Ami gone, my goal at this point is very simple. It's make the fight as long as possible, make them lose as many troops as possible, no matter what it costs, and stay in the fight, make one of them surrender. And that was really my goal at this point, is, make it as hard a fight for them as it is for us. And so we changed with extra assets to being as aggressive as possible, and trying to contest as much as possible. Really just claw in, and there's the surrender. That's what we were looking for. I'll hold the fight as long as we could.
Indeed, and it forces communism to resign because he's as a strict air player marginally, I believe, or with very limited assets on the ground. He doesn't have much more. I don't think he can do for his team at this point. So that's why we see the resignation.
And I was really happy. Compared to our last game, we really did damage. We had a good anti-air net, and it costs them. They couldn't take advantage of their superiority, and seeing him resign first and seeing that difference in this game between this game and the last game we played against them, I'm quite happy with that result.
And your infantry is even starting to make Comrade Reach on his infantry is even starting to make its way back into Gulf on the south side, or to say technically the north side. For those of you that don't know, the white arrow on the minimap indicates true north.
Now, I wish I would have responded a bit earlier. I really wanted to try to get this match down to the last minute, make them fight for every second, and I very much should have pulled commands earlier for Alpha, just to contest it and slow down the point bleed, because a +3 point bleed, that adds up, and that really means the game is heading towards being complete, if you let that +3 point bleed just go.
I would see those shulkers just shred another.
And I'm actually quite happy with this positioning. We've taken back that whole forest. So really, in a real way, it is just a strict one-dimensional line fight. They have the town, we have the forest, and it's the one line of fire coming in. So it's not a bad tactical position, actually.
Indeed.
That being said, they've got the buildings, and they're definitely causing us some pain. And they're definitely using those Nonas to really put down some nasty artillery fire.
Indeed. From your side, yeah, I definitely could see the use of smoke here now that you've established presence over the forest. That once you got some smoke in to get between the buildings and just to cover the open ground between the forest and the towns, either side could essentially make a crossing together. But we don't have a lot of infantry. It looks like a lot of damage infantry, but no supplies for them to get restocked or anything, unfortunately.
As you were saying, the team did a really good job bringing supplies up, making sure that their infantry and their tanks were resupplied, and that position, it's a hard place to bring supplies into, and, well, we just didn't, so that's our own problem, really.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of zooming out here.
So
Looks like
I made a mistake, and I quick moved a command in, so the command gets sniped. This could have really made the difference in holding the fight to the end. I'm trying to get a command on the Gulf to contest it, and it's going to get shot. One shot by a tank. Boom, done.
Axiom at this point having no patience anymore and being rich on resources just pulls in a quad stack in T72 ways. No shits given.
If you've got the assets, use them. I've really changed my opinion throughout the tournament on stacking vehicles, especially for the assault. Having that combined force where you get all the fire at once, and the second part of it is micro. When you're trying to do an assault, when you're trying to move a lot of stuff, if you've got to move 4 individual tanks, or you can just move a force tank stack of tanks, there's a certain point where there's a tactical advantage for planning just to move 4 tanks or 3 tanks.
Indeed. It's definitely about the economy of efficiency in regarding the micromanagement of all of it. Of course, people could say, get uber micro, noob, but at the end of the day, most of us are not the uber micro edgelords that have been playing, Warcraft 3 since 2007 or something. But I think there's a solid use for being able to more efficiently manage uh, platoons of tanks in triple or quad stacks or sections in pairs.
What do you mean you haven't been playing Warcraft 3, Red? I'm disappointed.
Oh,
Now, this is a really interesting one, and something I look forward to Warno or some of the new games coming out for is it'll give you kind of a view of where you can see what enemy troops can see and what the lines of sight are. And I think one of the really big advantages that you wouldn't really think about on this map is the area between Gulf and the mountain. If you go down to Gulf and you zoom in, they actually have lines of fire up onto the mountain with their tanks behind the forest. And so when you bring your tanks and you bring any transports, and you've actually got to keep them close down to the forest, otherwise they'll be targetable. So it means your supply route is very much limited to the thin strip of forest, and that's the only place you can bring in reinforcements through.
indeed, the elevation of this mountain, or just say the mountain, the ground ascending to the mountaintop, makes it difficult to hide anything behind the tree lines. Ooh. And it looks like, is that Axiom's Malkas doing work over there? I think it is. I think I saw a couple of heavy hitters dropping on those tanks. And uh, what the hell is that? It can't be the Malka. They just fired. Can they actually fire that fast? No, can't be. I missed the artillery that was firing on some tanks that you had. My apologies.
One thing they've done is they've maintained that the Mi-25D, they brought it back in and they sniped the command I brought out to Alpha. Once again, that just keeps them with the +3 point lead. I hadn't parked it properly, I hadn't parked it in cover, and I hadn't properly moved the Uke-wings forward to provide just a light anti-air net. And it's a really good job of them of just maintaining the pressure and maintaining that point lead. That cost us, and that really prevented us from bringing this down to the end of the match, which is what my goal at this point was. My goal was to fight them literally to a standstill, fight them to the point where they just had to wait for the time to go out. And the next time, I will do that. Or I will damn try.
Well, let's see if we see any last-minute desperation attempts here.
I will commend Comrade Ri Chen-hee has done a really good job of moving forward with the LSTR 40s and setting up in the village across the mountain. Just trying to push forward that flanking position and take whatever position you can, really, to extend the line and see where the enemy's line is. The difficulty there is they've got T-64Bs, they've got artillery, and it's a kind of an exposed location without a lot of supporting fire.
And they have tanks in depth ready to respond if you rush over. So they are just doing defense in depth.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job of that.
Indeed.
And every match I've watched them play, they do a fantastic job of that. So I really commend their playstyle. I think it's a very good defensive playstyle. At this point, we've got what my goal is. We've got the point bleed down to +1. And it just buys us that time to see if we can do anything else. I've snuck a command into the forest just on Gulf, and then I put the command back out in Alpha, just a bit more protected this time. And at this point, Comrade Ri Chen-hee has run out of infantry again, and so you'll start seeing lots of tanks rolling out, and that's going to be, as you said, what will be tried. Leave it to people's imagination. if all you have is tanks, well,
Yeah.
I'm really happy we managed to keep the air net up on our mortars. We managed to keep most every one of our mortars alive, keep them firing throughout the match, um, which I think gave us a little bit of, not an advantage, but it really helped us hold ground. Is just always being able to put fire down, always being able to say we can see your assets and we're just putting pressure on them constantly.
This T-64B, Markovic, does not seem to be enjoying those mortars pouring on him all the time,
I just wish we would have had bigger artillery to hit them with, but
right? Yeah, that's the drawback on the mortars. They're fast firing, but when you need them to actually deal real damage, their output's negligible against anything that has armor.
really good choice from Kamar Reach and He for those LSTR-40s again. That the Vieglas and the Vampers just preventing anything from really being able to move up and provide a flanking position on Gulf. Now we've only got 40 points left, so this is very much endgame, and we'll have to see what happens. Just looking over the map quickly, they've maintained supply. They've got a couple Colossus parked around. Um, most of their units are at essentially full health. It's a really nice setup, really nice layered defense with infantry and tanks supporting. Um, yeah.
Ooh. Well, as the last minute, that plane just went down. I gotta identify what that was. Let's take a look here. That looks like a. Oh, that was a Czech thermobaric bomber. The
Now,
the thermobaric napalm bomber. Oh, you hate to see it go down.
very, very painful thing to go up against. That was 5 radar anti-aircraft guns. So just a volume of fire that literally just erases it. Here comes the tank assault. As you say, smoke. There is actually smoke that time.
Hmm.
I was talking to Ambi after the match, and I think you can see the fire coming in from their fire base in the forest. And proper use of smoke by military doctrine is to provide a restricted view on a flank of an attack. And so an appropriate place for smoke might have actually been to provide cover from the forest across the river instead of being on the area where we're attacking, so we can't even see what we're attacking.
Indeed, indeed. And Axiom redirecting his tank platoons to commit War Thunder over here. As we see tanks moving into the town.
T-72A.
Those tanks,
No,
unfortunately, are just getting mulched because they are outclassed by everything that they are going up against.
now here's the Hail Mary. You can see a little command unit desperately trying to straggle across the plain. It's just trying to get into the corner of India and get rid of that +1 point lead to keep us in the match for as long as possible.
Indeed.
And you can watch it. It's just, we're at 96 points. We got 3 points left, and it just won't make it in time.
Ah, sad, sad. And their little guy. And that
Right
is
there.
the game.
So, um, overall, for that match, for me, I'm not happy with the losses I took. I think a lot of that is the ships and the planes, and it's just, learning how to manage things. I'm a fairly new player to the game, and I don't have some of the skill to do that. Just practice, 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 practice.
No, that's
Um,
fair. It's an in-house tournament. This isn't expected to be totally high-end meta, sort of gameplay here.
As always, when playing with Comrade Reach and she does a phenomenal job of just pushing up infantry fighting, and supporting those positions, bringing up the proper anti-air assets, the proper mix of assets to hold a position. And I wish we would have got a little bit more infantry and line infantry support to the fight in the town to keep it in the town earlier, and bringing in supporting assets to really try to fire back on the infantry moving in and provide kind of a hard wall against any sort of armor push.
Indeed.
Um,
And
and
sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, also want to give props to Communism's team. They all had a kill the death ratio, which came out net positive, while all having achieved some amount of conquest points, obviously. But no, I think Axiom did all right for holding down the fort on that other side of the map. Although there is always sort of a question about how much forces you need in an area. Um, I think there's a bit of economy regarding the use of deployment in the sense that you want to hold an area with the minimum force possible if you're looking to just occupy it. Otherwise, how do you say? You don't want to have a great deal of assets deployed in a single area that won't be of use. So there's a mind for economy there. Like if you get away with having a recon unit anti-air, maybe like an anti-tank carrier to kind of stave off attacks, that should be good enough to hold down an area and then deploy your forces elsewhere.
Just trying to look up here and see what Ambi's final deck was. Red Dragon's motorized. I think that was a really, really difficult deck to play for Ambi, just given the number of tank assets that were providing effective firing support on those infantry.
Hmm.
And I think Ambi did the best he could with a really, really tough fight. You know, bringing 80-point tanks in against really dug in anti-tank positions, bringing yeah, Yokwandai 90 against pretty solid infantry positions, and Pachangsu in against really solid infantry positions. Um, that is a tough fight to push, and the early use of the helicopters, the anti-air helicopters, to deny airspace, the solid use of the MiG-29s to deny airspace, the solid use of the ZDF 89s to cut off access and to provide anti-tank corridors. Uh, you know, holding the middle of the map and kind of doing a supporting role to Comrade Regency's kind of dedicated fight in the town. I think Abby did a really good job there too.
Indeed.
For communism, once again, I think we did a lot of a better job. Our team denying the airnet this time, and I'm pretty proud of just saying, yep, the first player to drop was their air player, because it meant, from the last game, instead of just saying we're going to try to cut off their access to their air corridors, no, we're just going to take out the air assets. And it meant we were a little bit heavy in anti-air assets, but it dealt with and we took casualties from the air, but it definitely kind of held them back. And so, I mean, communism did the best you could with the air assets, yeah, but I'm glad we made it a bit more painful than last time.
Indeed. All right.
Once again,
Oh,
with Axiom and Panda, they did just a fantastic job doing multi-layered fighting. Really, really, really solid teamwork between the motorized and the armored deck in terms of moving the infantry forward and then having those armored assets to provide fire support. Um, very good positioning and just good solid defensive play and good coordinated assaults. I guess for both teams, the big thing is smoke and how to use it, and yeah, smoke.
yes. Smoke all the time. Well, all right. Then yeah, I guess if I got any final words here was that it was fun organizing the tournament, and I'll be looking forward to organizing another in the maybe in the coming summer. But we'll see how things
Yeah,
pan out. Um,
yeah. Thank you very much, Red. Once again, thank you for taking the time to do the organization and getting everyone involved. For me personally, it went from saying, this is a game that I play with these guys because they play it, to this is a game that's really cool. And so it's really playing with micro decks and playing with the format that really brings the game to life and really forces very certain play styles and forces very specific strategic choices. It really makes this game into something very special, very unique, and very fun. So thank you, Red, for organizing the tournament.
oh yeah, no problem. All right. Well, thank you for joining in the tournament, and I'd like to thank everybody who signed up to make it possible. And well, I'm looking forward to seeing you all at the next one. And yeah, I think we everybody's going to learn a lot from the tournament, and looking forward to seeing how the next one turns out.
I'll be back to suffer more.
All
Uh,
right, I'll be looking forward to it, old man.
yeah, yeah, I know.
All right. Well, thank you for watching, everyone, and we'll hopefully see you in some future videos and maybe the next tournament. Have a good one.